and alcohol. I'm your host, Nancy McKay. I'm a certified life coach, author, and speaker. I've been sober for over 11 years, and I'm a 5-year ovarian cancer survivor. Today, our guest is Regina Topelson. Regina is a registered dietitian nutritionist and a cancer survivor herself who uses a functional medicine approach to address health concerns of her clients. Functional medicine is a system of looking at each person individually through a personalized approach to health, discovering the root causes of a person's ailments instead of focusing on their symptoms. When the root causes are eliminated, the symptoms are eliminated as well. Regina believes that food is medicine. She uses a whole food, plant-based approach to tackling difficult health problems like digestive disorders, autoimmune disease, and cancer. Regina is an expert in healing chronic illness with diet and lifestyle. Welcome, Regina. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Nancy. Thank you for having me on your Facebook Live.
This is going to be fun. So, Regina, let's start out. Why don't you tell our audience about you and your journey with cancer and how you got into being a dietitian?
Well, so interestingly, I became a dietitian long before I got cancer. And actually, I became a dietitian because both of my kids, who are now 19 and 16, were born with food allergies. And so I had been tackling that and dealing with that on my own for about 8 years before I decided that, enough people had approached me for help with that topic that maybe I should educate myself and be an expert at that before, continuing on counseling other people with, their families and their kids and food allergies and so forth. So that was really I went into it with that in mind. And I had been a dietitian working at a local area hospital for 3 years before I was diagnosed with cancer. And my cancer journey really begins, oddly enough, with the fact that I was 3 weeks away from running my first half marathon. So I remember looking at myself that summer. We had moved into a new home. I was remodeling our kitchen single-handedly with my 2 hands, right? Like my own 2 hands. And and I was running and I was looking at myself in the mirror thinking, my goodness, like I look so good. Like that time in your life where you're like, I look better than I did when I was in high school, and you're like so proud of yourself. And, you kind of like look this way and then you look that way and, like it's all good, right? It's all good in every direction. And then this sort of just blindsided me. It literally just blindsided me. I just had no clue and no signs, like no. So it's not genetic. It doesn't run in my family. And I had no signs or symptoms. They talk about tenderness, they talk about discharge, they talk about, all these things. And none of them applied to me.
And what kind of cancer did you have?
I had breast cancer.
Breast cancer, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it just, it really took me by surprise.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so, you and I have talked in the past about the link between cancer and alcohol. And did that have anything to do with your cancer, do you think?
So I'm not sure. Aside from the fact, we'll talk about what the recommendations are, and I'll get into all that. I will say that, my whole life I had really been about 110 pounds sopping wet. And during my pregnancies, I didn't drink at all. During the time that I was nursing my kids, I didn't drink at all. I donated 4,100 ounces, 4100, ounces to the milk bank with my second one over a period of a year. So I didn't drink during that time. I'm not one of those people that had ever been, I'll have my one glass a night with my dinner, or, the recommendations for, from most of the sites are that, it's one drink for women per day and 2 drinks for men, right?
Right.
Okay. But actually those are false recommendations, right? That's just, they're just saying okay, if you're not going to be classified as an alcoholic, then, it's 1 drink for women per day and 2 drinks for men. Otherwise, more than that, you're getting into kind of gray territory.
Right.
But really, there's really no safe limit or a safe dosage, we should say,
right,
for alcohol for anyone. So did it play a role? I was not a big drinker. If I had one full glass of wine, I think that's defined as 6 ounces for wine. On a Friday night once a week, and then if we went out somewhere on Saturday night, I might have something else on Saturday night. But I was a lightweight. I guess that's the point I'm trying to get to is let me just land the plane here, okay? I was a lightweight, okay? And so I was not a big drinker. So honestly, I can't really say, that it did play a big role.
Right.
But I can't say that it didn't play any role, because at one point, I was drinking a little bit here and there, and socially, and enjoying it. And so maybe.
Yeah. So you touched on just a moment ago the link between alcohol and cancer, and we have just read parts of this lengthy article about breast cancer and alcohol consumption is a direct link to breast cancer. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and if there's any other cancers that you're aware of that have this link? And then, of course, we'll want to touch on the recent notification, I guess, from the American Cancer Society that complete and total abstinence is their new recommendation as far as alcohol and cancer goes. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So the World Health Organization actually classifies alcohol as a class 1 carcinogen, which means there is a direct link between alcohol and cancer. So with breast cancer in particular, alcohol accounts for about 15% of total diagnosed cases per year, and about 6% of breast cancer mortalities each year. So that's significant.
Right.
That's really significant. And the other cancers, there's about 6 other cancers that alcohol, plays a role in. Liver cancer is one, and pancreatic cancer is another one. Prostate cancer is another one. So it's significant. Its role in cancer diagnosis, cases, mortalities, it's significant.
Yep. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and while the link to ovarian cancer isn't direct like it is with breast cancer, I have no doubt that it didn't have an impact on my getting cancer. And I was sober 6 years before I was diagnosed. So who knows how long that had played a role, because I was a heavy drinker for a long time. So I'm sure it had an effect. And so,
and ovarian cancer is a reproductive cancer. And so my take on it is, well, they just haven't found that link yet.
Right.
Not to say that it doesn't exist. It's just we haven't figured it out yet.
Right. So did what got you interested in becoming a nutritionist and a dietitian? What started that for you?
Well, I think it actually started back when I was in undergrad. I just thought it was such a cool field, and I thought, nutrition is something that I have been interested in my whole life. I think really, I toyed with being a vegetarian in college. Of course, what girl doesn't? Right?
I didn't.
Also, I grew up in a family where my dad has been vegetarian for 46 years.
Oh, wow.
45 years. 45 years.
Wow.
And so his journey with health and vegetarianism and kind of Eastern medicine, that all started when I was very, very young. And so I sort of just grew up with that as part of like what's like a normal thing, right? So it was always kind of there for me. I was interested in it. I was pre-med when I was in undergrad the first time around. I have too many degrees to count. It's really overwhelming. It's overwhelming, but regardless, so my interest in health and well-being and all things health and wanting to be a doctor in the healthcare field, it was always just there.
Right. So you come by it very, very honestly.
I do.
Yeah, that's great. So, so then after you had cancer, did that change anything on your in your focus in your career, or did it have an impact in any other way?
Well, I will tell you that like the minute I found out, I was like, I have to get myself to Whole Foods. It was like a homing device, like you heard the bing, 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 like right. So I just like had to get myself to Whole Foods, and then so I went that very first evening, and just loaded up my cart with everything green. I don't know why, but just like instinctively, I felt like something green was going to save me, and I started juicing. And so, that was kind of like what I did for myself while I was going through treatment, was I was juicing a lot.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. But in terms of, how did it change and how did it change my field and my focus? It did. It really did. I worked at the hospital throughout that year. And then I guess it was, almost a year later. So I was diagnosed in October, ironically, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, right? And or maybe not so ironically. And then I left my hospital job in late August of the following year.
The following year.
And I started my own private practice because I really decided that I wanted to focus on dealing with people who are walking and talking and not quite the critically ill yet. I should say that what I was doing at the hospital was working on the ICU, taking care of critically ill patients.
Wow.
So what I wanted was a shift in focus, obviously, to people who were not critically ill and hadn't gotten to that point yet.
Right.
And I kind of wanted to help them to never get there, to never get to that point.
Right. Right.
To save their health as much as they could. And since then, I have even shifted a little bit more. My focus now really is lifestyle medicine, personalized lifestyle medicine. As my website says, more life, less medicine, which is still my focus, and it's my passion to help people be healthy, and avoiding diseases like cancer is a huge part of that.
Right. Well, that it's so inspiring to hear that message, and to, I love that. More life, less medicine. I think that's really great.
Yeah,
So
I can sum it up any shorter than that.
no, that's exactly right. So what else has changed in your life? You've got pretty much grown children. You said 19 and 16.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So you're almost an empty nester.
Almost. Well, if it wasn't for COVID, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So what else has changed is that I put a lot more emphasis in my life now on exercise and staying active. I think like most people, prior to the cancer, it was like I would get really fit and I'd be really happy with the way things were going, and then I'd get busy, and exercise would be the first thing out the window. It wouldn't even be the last thing out. It would be the first thing out the window because that was like the one thing that I didn't have time for anymore.
Yeah.
And now I understand that I just don't have any options when it comes to that. Like that is a part of my life. And so I walk every day. I walk with my dog, and Lucky Girl. And and then I also I bike. Oh, speaking of
which,
wow, speaking of Lucky Girl, I don't even know what
she knew you were talking about her.
She did. So me and my Lucky Girl, we walk every day, and I bicycle 3 to 4 times a week. And I'm an avid cyclist, actually.
Wow.
I've done a few organized bike rides. Actually, my very first one, I should tell you about this. It's kind of funny. My very first one was the triple bypass. And when I was telling people that I was going to do the triple bypass, they were like, "Oh my God, is your heart okay? And when is your surgery?" No. No, I don't need one afterwards either. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's for those who don't know, it's a bike ride in the Rocky Mountains. It's an all-day event.
And that was your first one out of the gate.
It was my first one out of the gate. Believe me, I tried to have other ones before that. It just didn't work out. So it's 120 miles of uphill riding in the Rocky Mountains from
holy shit.
In one day. Yeah, not 40 miles each day. It's 120 in one day. And I tried. I really did. I wanted to do the Elephant Rock in preparation for it, before, and it just didn't happen. So
and life goes on. So, Regina, how can people get in touch with you, and how can they find you?
So they can get in touch with me through my website, www.lifewell-lived.com. And all my information is listed on there about how to work with me, how to get in contact with me. I should also mention I have a podcast for cancer patients and survivors. Yes, which I love that I've interviewed you for that.
And that was really fun. I really enjoyed that. So that was great. Yeah. It's nice to come full circle here.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some rapid fire questions.
Oh, let's do it.
What's your favorite food?
Food. This is supposed to be rapid fire. I'm supposed to just.
Oh, no, it's not. No, we can talk about it.
Oh, okay. All right. My favorite food. I have to really think about that. I don't know. Strawberries, maybe.
Ooh.
It's a good one.
Sounds good.
They're in my refrigerator right now, so I just saw them, so maybe that's why.
There you go. Okay. And what's your favorite book?
Oh, this is an easy one. The Alchemist.
Ah, yes. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And what's your favorite curse word?
The F-bomb. And it comes off several times a day. Actually, I always joke, that I'm like this, kind of petite, woman, like small. I'm 5'1", so I'm not real tall. Yeah. I'm tiny, like when it comes to, how I look.
People don't expect that to come out of you.
Oh, there's a sailor who lives inside of me.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Which is why
today.
which is why we hit it off so well.
Yes. So, yeah, exactly. It's the F-bomb for sure. Just, yeah.
Well, that's the one I like the best as well. So did we leave anything out? Is there anything else that you'd like to add and tell our audience?
About myself or about alcohol?
Anything that you want. Anything you want. We've got a little bit more time, so
sure. Like we had talked about it on my podcast as well, but I kind of want to mention it here too because it's something that's not talked about real often. And I just want to mention that, like the alcohol industry, it started to see its sales go down, right? And so the people it started marketing to when it started to watch its sales go down were women.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's real obvious or we just don't think about it or it's part of our society to want to imbibe in alcohol. But the targeting and the marketing of alcohol to young people in general and young women specifically,
right,
is a huge, huge problem in our society, and we don't recognize it until we feel like someone has an addiction to it.
Right, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Exactly.
It really doesn't. And we're so conditioned to having alcohol around, and it's so prevalent that it's really easy to become addicted to, and it's an addictive substance. So that's the intent, is to get you addicted so that you will buy more.
Yeah, and it's benign. It's like when we start targeting it to young girls, it's coolers and spritzers and not real heavy.
Yeah, rosé.
And that's in middle school and in high school. By the time they're kind of done with high school, we're moving on to ciders and beer and things that are a little heavier. By the time they get to college, it's full on hard alcohol. And the girls, like if we look at most of them, they're about the size of my pinky, right? And women, we know, like they don't eat before they go out because
God forbid.
God forbid, we don't want bloating. We don't want to look bad and
fit in our jeans.
Yeah, right. Okay, exactly. So so we don't eat before we go out, and so there's no food in your stomach to slow down. And by the way, the absorption, that's the rest of the sentence. Right. No food in your stomach to slow down the absorption. But the other thing is that the alcohol, when you drink alcohol, it goes right through the stomach. It gets absorbed right away. And it's not like everything else that has to go through the whole process of digestion.
Right.
And so, and alcohol has a pickling effect, really, on everything, which is why you start to feel that buzz real fast, because it starts to actually kind of deaden and pickle your brain cells.
Yeah.
That's why you start to feel that way.
Right.
And I think it's just, we start women young, and then, we keep them going through those mommy years with the mommy cup, right? The mommy sippy cup. You don't know what's in there, right? And it, like I said, it doesn't really become a problem until it is a problem.
Right.
So I think education has to start at home. I don't have girls. I have 2 boys, but I have 2 nieces. And, I try to talk to them when I can. My younger one, she's only 12. So she's kind of just on the cusp of, being like an appropriate topic to talk about. But my other niece is 16. And it's the right age.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'd be surprised if she's not already drinking. I mean, I started drinking when I was 16. So,
right.
And it's, for some people, they could take it or leave it. Right. And hopefully they're confident enough that they don't let the peer pressure affect them, and they are, they're good with standing up for themselves and not caving. But that wasn't, for me, it started young. I tapered off, and then I hit it hard again in my 20s, and you know, and I never looked back.
Yeah, and I don't think that for most kids, and especially most girls that are in high school, I don't think they leave it. I think that peer pressure plays a big role, and I think
I
that
think so too.
if they don't want to do it, they end up doing it. So
Yeah.
um,
If you want to be one of the cool kids, you have to, slug back a few, and then it just opens you up for a whole nother set of problems, because alcohol is probably the biggest date rape drug. And so, it um, it decreases your judgment and your inhibitions and everything else. And so it's really it can really be an issue. And so for any younger women that are watching, please do your homework and become educated on how alcohol affects you in particular and how it is marketed to you. And that's a wake up call right there, is how, if you look at how the marketing is, it's really alarming. So yeah.
And we talked about also on my podcast, like how, if you know your wines, you're a connoisseur, and if you know your tequilas, you're a badass, and
Yeah.
your alcohols, if you know your vodkas, like it's just, you have this image, right? But the truth of the matter is that you're doing yourself harm, and we don't talk about this in society as we should,
Right.
um, even that article that you and I had both read, it talks about how in other countries it's very accepted, it's very normal. They had done some studies and said, well, in France, the reason why the French paradox exists is that, and the French paradox, for people who don't know what that is that they eat a lot of meat and cheese. It's heavy, it's fat laden, and yet the French are very thin people. And the study actually said that the reason why that this French paradox exists and works is because also they drink alcohol 3 times a day. That's actually not why it works. Anyone who's been anywhere in Europe knows it's not just France, it's anywhere in Europe. You have to walk like almost 1 million steps a day to get anywhere that you want to go. Even if you're taking the subway, it doesn't get you door to door like you do here in America in your car, right? So even if you take the subway or the metro or the whatever, the Eurorail to get from here to there, you still have to walk, and you have to take stairs because the elevators they only fit half of you, and then the other half of you has to walk up. So so it's that was not talked about in that study. And
Right.
so, no, it's not the alcohol that makes the French paradox work. It's the fact that they take 1,000 steps, not 1,000, they take 1 million steps a day.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge concern, and it's obviously my passion to help, women that are concerned about where their drinking has led them, and when they're ready to take a look at their relationship with alcohol. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to hit rock bottom. You don't have to, you know, get to the worst place ever before you quit drinking. It's, unfortunately, it's becoming a little bit more common and, dare I say, hip to really cut back or stop drinking. There's a huge sober curious movement, and I think that's fabulous. And my passion is to demolish and shatter the stigma of alcohol abuse and alcoholism, and because it's not something to be ashamed of. It's something that has been literally poured down our throats. And, some people become addicted and some people don't, but it's not healthy for anyone. And, it's just, it's really something for everyone to take a look at.
Correct. And you know what? I don't think there should be any shame involved in it either. You know what? If someone had taken advantage of you, you wouldn't feel ashamed, that happened, right? Like
Right.
you would say, well, let me look at the situation and let me see what happened, and let me, try to figure out how I can do better next time. Well, it's the same thing with alcohol. We've all been manipulated, right,
Yep.
by the industry and marketed and targeted to think that this is okay and that it's benign, and that it's fine for us to engage in. But in reality, that is manipulation and being taken advantage of.
Right.
And so, instead of feeling ashamed in and of it with yourself, you just have to recognize, like, okay, this is something that happened to me. I've been manipulated, and how can I get out from under this, and not allow that to continue to happen anymore, and take responsibility for myself, as you said.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Regina. I so appreciate you being here with us today, and remind everybody again where they can find you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you, Nancy. They can find me at www.lifewell-lived.com.
Wonderful. And if you're interested in connecting with me, you can hop over to my Facebook group, Women in Alcohol. I'd love to have you join me there. It's a private, confidential, safe place for you to connect with me and learn a little bit more about it. So, love to have you join us.
Thank
So,
you.
I thank you so much. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.